Welcome to Story 24 for January. This month we decided to break the story of 5 different movies. So we came up with characters, general plot outline, some themes, just the ideas that would go into further development on a story. Here's the first one.
Our first movie is Beric the Briton, a sweeping epic set in ancient Rome and Britain. Our main character, surprisingly, is Barrack, a chieftain of the British people. We find him at the battle, the big battle that takes place where the Britons are defeated, crushed, catastrophically. And he's taken captive to Rome, where 2 things happen to him. First, he's sold as a slave to a gladiator school along with some of his fellow British captives. And at first he's like, I'm not gonna fight for you, but then his faithful companion, where'd he go? Boduoc, there he is. His faithful companion Boduoc is like, listen, you've got to lead your men. This is our new life now. You've got to make stuff work. So, as part of being a good gladiator, eventually he's given a little bit more freedom. And surprisingly, he befriends a Roman family consisting of the father, Norbanus, the mother, Lesbia, we didn't name her, take that up with Henty, and the 2 daughters, Amelia, the oldest and more outgoing, and Aeneas, the quieter, more stay-at-home one. In the meantime, Barrack is still fighting in the gladiatorial games and wins an epic 2v1 battle where he impresses Emperor Nero so much that Nero actually hires him and the rest of the Britons as his own personal guard. As the story progresses, we actually find out that Aeneas, even though she's part of a rich family, has become a Christian, which was kind of considered to be like a slave religion. And so it's kind of a shame to her family, but it becomes dangerous when Rome burns. Nero is blamed for the burning of Rome, and so to shift the blame from himself, he blames the Christians, and Aeneas is captured in kind of like the cleanup operation against the Christians, and she's sentenced to death in the arena. Barrack is there as a gladiator. He's there on the day of. The family's there. They're kind of being forced to watch this, and Barrack is kind of conflicted within himself. Does he save Aeneas and jeopardize the position of all of his men, or stay silent and let her die? Eventually, as the moment comes and she's about to be fed to the lions, he jumps into the arena. Barrack fights the lion in an epic fashion, defeats the lion, saving Aeneas, and somewhat ticking off Nero. But he saves Aeneas. Unfortunately, because Aeneas was always kind of more sickly, the experience of being jailed and being under all that sort of stress, she actually ends up dying later of sickness. Barrack has risked his life and his position and has displeased Nero seemingly in vain. But we kind of see this in the Britons being displaced. At one point they were his favorite guards, but now they've kind of been moved away from his personal guard, and some of the other guards have kind of taken their place, like their rivals. And so the Britons can kind of tell, ooh, things are not going well for us. In that time, the Praetorian guards, who are the official guards of Nero, but not his personal guards, kind of come to the Britons. They're like, hey, listen, we don't like Nero, you don't like Nero, or Nero doesn't like you. Why don't you help us kill him, and it'll be great, and we can have a new emperor who will pay us lots of money. So some of the Britons go with the Praetorians, and Barrack has to choose. So he decides it's more important for him to make a new life with Amelia, and so during the chaos of the transition between emperors, he and Amelia escape Rome and make their way back to Britain, where they live happily ever after.
Our second movie is Robin Hood, but a new take. Instead of doing an origin story or something like that, we're starting with Robin Hood and Maid Marian getting married. So in this version, Robin Hood is not a dispossessed lord. He is actually Anthony, Lord of Locksley, and Robin Hood by night. Kind of like Batman. Anyways, on his wedding day, he also performs a heist during the carriage ride to the wedding feast. So in between his wedding and the wedding feast, he pulls a heist to get some money and gives it to his men to distribute to the people as a gift for his wedding day. However, when he gets to the wedding feast, there's something gone wrong, and everyone leaves, leaving him and his new bride alone for the evening. There's a scandal. Someone has been pretending to be Robin Hood, stealing, and has accidentally killed 3 people. The people all think that it's regular Robin Hood, but of course real Robin Hood knows that it's not him. Enter the Count of D'Evil, who is pretending to be Robin Hood to cover the fact that he's just stealing money and not actually robbing from the rich to give to the poor. He's just stealing money for himself, but he's disguising himself as Robin Hood because Robin Hood is an anonymous character. As a result, the local ruler raises taxes to hire more men to hunt down Robin Hood. Robin Hood continues to help those he can, but with the net closing in around him, getting harder and harder to actually help anyone out. Enter Guy de Gisbane, hired as a mercenary to hunt down Robin Hood, the fake Robin Hood who kills people. He ends up finding the real Robin Hood, fighting him and discovering that he is not the murderous Robin Hood. They end up joining forces, and as they go along, they basically figure out who the fake Robin Hood is, clear Robin Hood's real name, and live happily ever after.
Mystery, suspense, movie 3, The Butler Did It, working title. So, this movie is a bit of a spin on your classic whodunit. What we wanted to do was the main character, who we have temporarily named Beckett, called in to solve a murder that is taking place at a set of brownstone apartments. The murder takes place in one of the apartments, and we find the murderee, mystery writer Hank, slumped over his typewriter with some sort of message on the typewriter. Beckett actually dreads going to the brownstone. The reason being, the other residents of the brownstone, while not being mystery writers, are all mystery solvers. And what we mean by that are all like the stereotype amateur sleuths. So we've got a Sherlock, we've got a Columbo, we've got a Gibbs kind of like retired spy guy, we've got a fake psychic Sean, we've got a Miss Marple, and all of these, of course, will be like reworked and reimagined, but like those stereotypes. And all of them live in the apartments around where the murder takes place. So not only are they the suspects, but they're also all trying to solve the murder. So Beckett tries to lay down the law. He's like, no investigating. Like later that night, they all of them like individually sneak into the apartment, and they're like bumping into each other and all accusing each other. And that's pretty much the main hijinks of the movie, while Beckett keeps his head down and keeps kind of plodding forward, doing the basic police work, trying to figure out who done it. We could tell you more, but then we'd have to kill you. Movie number 4, Fairytale Reimagined. Just so you know, this one we're going for animated. And specifically, if you've seen the Netflix movie Klaus, we're kind of going for that kind of an animation style. But we start off in the real world with the really boring life of private investigator Jeremy King. A young man who wanted to make a difference in the world, comes straight out of community college to get his private eye license, and instead of having a life of adventure, he has a life of hunting down unfaithful spouses. And he's been doing this for maybe a year or two, and he's just ready to throw in the towel. If he has one more adultery case, he's done. When into his door walks, well, not into his door, but in through his door walks Goldilocks. Interesting. Goldilocks comes to him because she has been set up for a breaking and entering at the Three Bears house. She explains this. He, of course, being from the real world, isn't quite sure what she's talking about, but she explains how she runs a cleaning service. She was hired by the Three Bears to come and clean their house, but now they're saying that some jewels of theirs are missing, and they're trying to get her charged with the crime. Now, since there's no private investigators in Fairyland, she had to come through a portal to our world to find one. At first, he thinks maybe she's talking about something else, and then he realizes she's just crazy. So being a kind gentleman, he offers to give her a ride home. He helps her home. Somehow, through this process, they accidentally end up going back through the portal into her Fairyland, and now he's the only private investigator in Fairyland. He starts investigating, and we kind of find out that the bears might not be all they seem to be, and they start to become suspects. But they have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is the Three Bears and not Goldilocks, because Goldilocks may or may not have forgotten to mention that she has a bit of a past for breaking and entering. She says she's clean now, but is she? They must prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that she did it, or that she did not do it, to the dumb but honest captain of the guard. Through the process, they fall in love. Eventually, they're able to clear her name, and they live happily ever after until a prince walks through their door and says, "Can you find the woman who belongs to this shoe?"
We begin our 5th movie, a fast-paced international action thriller, kind of like Mission Impossible, with Nathan Ward. He is our hero. He is on an airplane fight. He saves the world. This is not, the end of the world kind of scenario, but this is your run-of-the-mill super spy kind of stuff. After he gets home from this, he's recovered, he's back at work. At work, there's a mysterious soldier. He happens to work with his wife, Abigail Ward, his partner, Triss, their technology and information specialist, and Carl Rune rounds out their team as their weapons specialist. Now, they have just received a suspicious soldier who has some bizarre genetic properties. They interview him and learn that he has been a kidnapped subject of a genetic experiment. They discover that this is the same genetic experiment that was once researched by a scientist who went missing 8 or 10 years ago. Our soldier is Aziz. He is from Cairo, so they travel to Egypt to investigate why he was kidnapped and experimented upon. Upon this, they find that many dignitaries and military individuals or mercenary groups have been invited to a suspicious gala that looks like it might be a black market auction. They go there and are discovered by the evil scientist who's running this whole scheme. He realizes that he has been made and that they're on to his scheme to create a super soldier serum and sell it on the black market. This leads to a formal party dance fight as at the gala, while dancing, Nathan and Abigail Ward have to fend off bad guys while not drawing attention to themselves and use their flashy dance moves to do so. This leads into a car chase through Cairo at night to escape the henchmen of the evil scientist, the Merc Captain, the hired gun of the evil scientist. As they regroup and make a plan to take down the evil scientist, the bad guy decides to start closing up shop. He decides it's time to burn the evidence. He sends out a team. They end up getting intercepted by Nathan Ward and our super soldier, Aziz, who, though experimented upon, has a heart of gold. They end up fighting in Old Cairo and narrowly escape, only to have to hunt down the evil scientist and destroy his super soldier serum. So these are our 5 movie ideas. Obviously, some of them are lacking details, and the one that's based on source material has the most complete story. But we feel like between the stuff that we talked about that ended up on the board and just all of the ideas that we threw out that were just a lot of fun, we have a really good idea of what the world and sort of the shape of each of these movies would be. We feel like we have a fair idea of how we could actually take these further into development and make any of these into a real movie. And while we will probably never actually do that, we had a ton of fun, Joshua, Amelia, and myself, breaking these stories and figuring out what are interesting characters or interesting takes on old ideas. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll be back in February.